The United States ceremonial officer, Tahir Hirsch, was presiding over the ceremony. He was the 49th descendant of the first ceremonial officer. He rarely appeared in public. The last time he'd shown his face was when Warhawk and several other countries visited the U.S. His presence aligned with the high standards of the ceremony. At 3 o'clock sharp, Tahir stood on stage, dressed in festive ceremonial attire. It's been 300 years since we've last had a sovereign. This auditorium has been sealed for just as long. This is the moment you've been waiting for. The ceremony begins now. His staff, who were also wearing ceremonial attire, brought over 3 items covered with a silk cloth. These are the 3 priceless treasures of the United States. They've never been in the same place at the same time until now. The first treasure is the Imperial Sword. The first item was unveiled. It was an ancient sword that exuded a mysterious aura. The staff unsheathed the sword halfway, revealing part of its blade. It glinted under the lighting. The one who wielded the sword had the authority to enforce the law and report later. The second treasure is the Royal Mask. The second item was unveiled. The royal mask was golden in color and was decorated with a dragon. It was vivid and lifelike. The third treasure is the tiger crest. The final item was unveiled, revealing 2 halves of the tiger crest. It was a symbol of power in ancient times. The leader of the country had 1 half, while the commander-in-chief had the other. The commander could only mobilize the troops and generals if they had 2 halves in their possession. But a complete tiger crest would be given to the sovereign. That proved how much the country approved of them. The royal mask represented status. The imperial sword symbolized authority, and the tiger crest was a reflection of power. The audience had a clear view of each treasure. The previous divine sovereign had never seen such a grand ceremony. These 3 treasures had been sealed for much longer than the venue. Only a martial artist could sense and feel the true essence of the 3 treasures. Kylan had profound cultivation potential. He couldn't tear his gaze away. In the past, his goal was to defeat Stephen and take over the position of commander. After seeing the 3 treasures with his own eyes, he realized he had to become the sovereign to prove his worth. The Imperial Sword, Royal Mask, and Tiger Crest were broadcasted live to the entire world. The countries overseas weren't the only ones who were amazed. The people of the U.S. were fascinated. I've never seen the Imperial Sword and Tiger Crest before. I think the Royal Mask looks cooler. Did you see the dragon embroidered on the surface? It's baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. These are the 3 treasures of the United States. I'm proud to be a citizen. They went crazy, but it was only natural because the 3 treasures represented the history of their country.
Mommy, look! Valeria pointed at the TV. Those 3 things are magical.
They're not things, Kim corrected. Those are treasures, and they're tokens of the sovereign. She proceeded to explain each treasure in great detail. Valeria listened carefully and nodded along, but the look on her face gave her away. She didn't understand a word. All you need to remember is that the sovereign is someone who the country respects. Valeria nodded again.
Like Daddy, right?
Kim patted her head with a smile. Yes, like Daddy. The star of the ceremony had yet to appear, so the media agency filled in the gaps with scenes of the audience. They were prominent guests, so the agency couldn't neglect anyone.
Mommy, look!
Valeria pointed at the TV again.
They're showing the guests. Daddy's going to be on TV.
Kim and Victoria stared intently at the screen as the camera moved, searching for Stephen in the crowd. The current commander-in-chief, Kylan Gale. The 4 great generals, Dennis, Roslyn, Zachary, and Jaden. The national treasure, Dr. Lionel Sloan. The camera panned over the audience, giving each guest their screen time. But to Kim and Victoria's disappointment, they didn't see Stephen. Valeria's smile fell.
Where's Daddy?
Maybe they were moving so fast that we missed him. Let's replay that part again. Victoria took the remote and replayed the clip where they were showing the guests. They watched carefully again. They still didn't see Stephen anywhere in the crowd. Kim couldn't help but feel a little disappointed in the officials. Stephen had helped win the war against the Alliance, and he used to be the commander-in-chief. He was below one and above the rest. She thought he was going to Annapolis to watch the ceremony because he was an invited guest. It turns out he didn't have the qualifications to sit in the audience. Victoria was thinking the same thing. Never mind. Maybe the camera missed some of the guests. Let's keep watching the broadcast. It's an important ceremony. We shouldn't miss too much of it. The Cassidy and Haynes families were also having trouble spotting Stephen in the audience.
Are you done yet, Harry?
Helen asked impatiently. They'd replayed the scene so many times that they'd missed a good chunk of the live broadcast. No, I can't find Stephen.
Stop looking already, Rebecca said. If you can't find him, it's because he's not there.
Rebecca's right, Gordon said. He didn't meet the requirements to receive an invitation.
If you ask me, him making a trip to Annapolis is all a farce, Mavis grumbled. He's trying to deceive Kim. We all know what he's like. He's overconfident and never honest. He didn't know the guests would be broadcasted live. He thought he could fool her.
That would make it even more ridiculous to find him in the audience, Helen said. It would be a disgrace. The rest of the family agreed and started criticizing Stephen. Everyone quiet down, Harry yelled. The Divine Sovereign's about to take the stage. They stopped and turned their attention to the TV. At the venue, the director was speaking into his walkie-talkie, giving reminders to the cameraman. Pay attention. The Sovereign is about to make their debut. Stay alert and get a close-up shot of them. This is an era-defining moment. Don't screw it up. That didn't help the cameraman's nerves. His hands were sweaty, and he was worried that he would drop the camera. But all he could say was, I got it. The guests were fixated on the stage. Kylan was a bundle of nerves. In just a few moments, he'd be witnessing a historic moment come to life. Please welcome the Divine Sovereign, Tahir announced. A man approached from a distance, heading for the stage. The stage was 20 feet high, and he was hidden from view as he ascended the steps. A haze shrouded the stage as a special effect. The cameraman couldn't capture the Sovereign's face. He aimed the camera in the direction where he thought he would be. When Stephen stepped on stage, he saw a table at the center with a coat spread out. He walked over, and two of the staff draped the coat over his shoulders. It was embroidered with 9 patterned dragons. A team of honorary guards had been waiting for him. They followed him to the platform. Stephen faced the crowd and unleashed his aura. It spread across the auditorium, dispersing the haze. The cameraman was peering through the lens, preparing to take the perfect shot, when a dazzling light blinded him. Those who were watching the broadcast from the screen saw nothing but bright light. The guests who were present covered their eyes. Even Kylan had to look away. He was a member of the hidden clans, and this was the first time he'd felt this kind of pressure in the outside world. Whoever the Sovereign was, they'd reached the Divine Grandmaster realm. Kylan scrapped his plan to challenge the Sovereign. He would lose in an instant. Seconds later, the radiance died down with the aura. The cameraman didn't hesitate and pressed the shutter, taking several pictures in a row. He sent the best one to the director of the media agency. He would be recorded in history as the first person to snap a special shot of the Sovereign. This was better than obtaining any award for his photography. But as he scrolled through the film to assess his handiwork, he found that none of the pictures he'd taken showed the Sovereign's face. How was this a close-up if his face wasn't showing? The cameraman checked the timer on the pictures. There was barely a 1-second gap between pictures. The first picture was taken right before the haze cleared, and the next picture, the mask was on. He'd taken an abundance of pictures, but none of them were record-breaking. The Sovereign had already put on the mask. He couldn't possibly ask him to take it off. The director of the media agency wasn't pleased with the picture he'd sent over. What are you doing? I told you I wanted his face in a picture. What is this? The sovereign was simply too fast, the cameraman said helplessly. His tone was aggrieved. I couldn't make it in time. Why don't you try replaying the broadcast and see if you can find the part where he hasn't put his mask on yet? That's the only way, the director grumbled. He replayed the footage to find that one insufferable second when the mask was off. But no matter how many times he replayed the broadcast, he couldn't intercept that one scene. He had no choice but to give up. The cameraman and director weren't the only ones in a bind. None of the guests had seen the sovereign's face either. That was way too quick, Constance said. He appeared on stage and then the mask was on in the next second. Did any of you see his face? Arlett and Raksha shook their heads. No. Me neither, Kingsley said. I felt his aura. Ours is nowhere near his. Mr. Gale has higher cultivation than all of us. He must have seen his face. The four of them turned to Kylan expectantly. Kylan touched the back of his neck awkwardly. He inwardly cursed Kingsley for not thinking before speaking. Like his students, he hadn't seen the sovereign's face either. Whatever Kylan said would only be digging a deeper hole for himself. He stayed quiet. Kingsley realized his mistake. He cleared his throat and tried to smooth things over. Let's keep watching the ceremony. The Cassidy and Haynes families had their eyes on the TV. It had been some time since the sovereign had appeared. Helen was sitting closest to the screen. She'd put on her glasses to make sure she didn't miss the moment.
Wasn't that too fast? I didn't even see him put on his mask. I couldn't see his face either, Mavis said.
Gordon was amazed.
He appeared and then put his mask in 1 second. Who is he? His aura was blinding. I could feel his magnitude from the screen. The former and current commanders combined wouldn't have an aura of that scale.
He's the sovereign, Helen said. His martial arts should be incredible. He's strong, but he's still human, Rebecca said. There are cameras everywhere, and it's a live broadcast. His face had to be captured at some point. Why don't we look for it? Everyone approved of her idea. They repeatedly watched the previous clip with intense focus. After 10 minutes, they gave up. His face wasn't on TV. At the villa, Valeria had pointed at the screen when the man stepped onto the platform amidst the haze. It's Daddy!
Kim and Victoria squinted to make out his features, but they were assaulted by a bright light that filled the screen. 1 second later, the sovereign was there with his mask on. Valeria, keep your voice down. That's not Daddy. Kim turned to Victoria. When Stephen gets back, we should sit down and have a proper talk with him. He keeps teaching Valeria all this nonsense. Victoria agreed. She sat Valeria on her lap.
That man on TV isn't your daddy. Let's keep watching.
Valeria nodded obediently.
Okay.
At the venue, remnants of haze lingered below the stage. The imperial sword radiated an ancient aura. It hovered over the table. The inscription on the tiger crest was shining. Please accept the tiger crest, Tahir instructed. Stephen nodded and held out his left hand. The two halves of the tiger crest merged and became one. It floated onto his palm. Please accept the imperial sword. Stephen held out his right hand. As if sensing its owner, the sword flew through the air towards his outstretched hand. He held the scabbard and pulled out the sword. A ray of golden light danced across the stage. The audience watched with fascination. Stephen pointed the tip of the sword at the sky. A pillar of golden light shot through the open dome and into the clouds. The imperial sword was known for being a symbol of authority. The wielder had the authority to enforce the law. But that wasn't all. Stephen was the only one who knew the true essence of the ancient sword. It had never been revealed until now. He sheathed the sword with a clang. The golden light scattered. That concludes the ceremony, Tahir announced. Please give the newly appointed Divine Sovereign a round of applause. He took the lead and applauded Stephen. Perhaps the audience was still entranced by the brilliance that had transpired moments before, but no one clapped along. Do you not approve of the Sovereign? The Leviathan unit called out to the crowd. If you have any objections, then stand up and voice them. The venue was silent. No one said a word, not even Kylan. The intensity of the Sovereign's aura was everything he needed to know. If he challenged the Sovereign, he would lose in one move. He had no chance of winning. What objections could he possibly have? The Leviathan unit scanned the audience, satisfied with their reactions. A loud voice drew everyone's attention. I object. This was the first time in 300 years that a divine sovereign was appointed. The scale of the ceremony was unprecedented, and it was broadcasted live to the entire world. If any mishaps occurred, it was imperative that it was handled properly to prevent ruining the country's reputation. The Leviathan unit thought they'd accounted for everything, but not this. No one had seen Stephen's face because of how fast he'd put on the royal mask, and his aura proved his strength. Who could be doubting his qualifications? Stephen himself was surprised. His first thought was Kylan. If anyone was questioning his position, it had to be him. Kylan had challenged him to a duel over and over again because he didn't think he deserved the commander-in-chief position. It wouldn't be a stretch to assume that he didn't approve of him being the sovereign either, even if he didn't know it was him behind the mask. What Stephen didn't know was that Kylan was thoroughly impressed and subdued by his aura. Kylan was actually trying to figure out his background. He guessed that the sovereign was from a hidden clan. No one else but an aristocrat could achieve the strength that the sovereign had displayed. The outside world wasn't capable of reaching his level. Doubt was the last thing on his mind. Stephen glanced in Kylan and his students' direction, but they weren't looking at him. It wasn't Kylan who'd spoken. The Leviathan unit was searching for the sound of the voice. Who would be so bold as to question the sovereign? This was a serious matter. It wasn't just anyone who was doubting him. It was a guest of honor. They observed the audience. Who objected? Reveal yourself. The same voice rang out. It was me. Everyone looked over to see a woman sitting in the audience with her legs crossed and arms folded across her chest. Stephen and Kylan were stunned. They knew who she was. Even the Leviathan unit was taken aback. No one had expected her to object. The young woman, Sylvie Estrella, was a general who had made significant contributions to the country, like Stephen and Kylan. She had a battalion under her command. Most of her troops were female soldiers, and their combat prowess was nothing to scoff at. They were fearsome opponents on the battlefield. When the Alliance attacked the United States, her battalion played an important role in securing victory. She was awarded a similar rank to Kylan's. The officials had originally wanted to appoint Sylvie the deputy commander, but because of how strongly Kylan felt against Stephen being the commander-in-chief, they'd changed their minds. She was famous in the military, but she wasn't as well known among the public because Stephen and Kylan's popularity had overshadowed her. Sylvie was in her mid-20s, and she was a few years younger than Kylan. She was 5'6", and she'd been practicing martial arts since she was young. Becoming a general at her age was a significant achievement. She had a fiery personality, and she was formidable on the battlefield. People had given her the nickname Demoness General. Even Kylan had acknowledged her strength. The Leviathan unit considered her to be an important member of the army. If anyone else had objected, they would have dragged them away. But they couldn't do that with Sylvie. She was on par with Stephen and Kylan. What's the reason for your objection? The Leviathan unit demanded. Stephen was also curious. He was familiar with Sylvie's name, rank, and achievements, but other than that, he'd never had a proper introduction with her. The battlefield was a big place, and enemies were everywhere. It was difficult to interact with every single soldier unless there was a large-scale battle that required cooperation. It's not complicated, Sylvie said. I believe everyone will understand once they hear my reasons. The guests at the venue turned to stare. Spectators from around the country were fixated on the screen. As for the world across the ocean, they were looking forward to the United States making a fool of themselves. The sovereign had made a grand entrance and displayed his incomparably powerful aura, but it was to be ruined by one of the guests. You're overstepping your boundaries, the Leviathan unit warned. This was a live broadcast. Any unexpected disruption could turn the U.S. into a laughingstock. This was even more so when the person who'd interrupted the ceremony was the general of the army. Kylan's eyes were wide with astonishment. The sovereign's past contributions and achievements hadn't been revealed, but the aura he'd unleashed when he appeared on stage wasn't something he, Sylvie, or anyone else in the room could achieve. Sylvie's bold objection was directly questioning the officials of the country. "Let her explain," Stephen said. The sovereign had spoken, so the Leviathan unit couldn't refute. "The sovereign has allowed you to speak. What is the reason behind your objection? If you don't have a valid reason, there will be repercussions." The Leviathan unit represented the supreme leader. Everyone watching was nervous for Sylvie. Sylvie faced the Leviathan unit's warning head-on. "All right, if I can't convince the masses, then I'll voluntarily resign from my position as the general of the army. I have 3 reasons for my objection. First, our country exists because of the former commander. He won the war against the Alliance and defeated Devil Hall twice. However, he was only able to become the commander-in-chief." Sylvie held out her hand, gesturing to the sovereign on stage. "I would like to ask, what achievements has the divine sovereign made that makes him worthy of this position?" The audience held their breaths. They'd been wondering the same thing before the ceremony, but they were still trying to take in the sovereign's powerful aura. His mysterious achievements were temporarily forgotten until Sylvie voiced their curiosity. Stephen nodded. "Continue." "Second, most of the guests here today are from the military. We respect those who are stronger than us, but we've never seen the sovereign in action. We'll recognize him as our leader if he accepts our challenge and wins." "That's preposterous," the Leviathan unit retorted. The sovereign was on par with the supreme leader. Not just anyone could challenge him. Even Kylan, who was brave enough to challenge the newly appointed sovereign, had changed his mind after witnessing his aura firsthand. Sylvie had experienced the ceremony from start to finish. She had to have known how strong he was. Was the challenge really necessary? Sylvie ignored them and continued. "I have a 3rd reason. I don't know where the current sovereign came from, but I believe that only the former commander is qualified to take the position." The crowd was astounded. No one had expected her to conclude her impromptu speech by mentioning the former commander. He had been incredible at its peak of his military career, but he'd suffered a debilitating injury after his duel with Kylan. Stephen himself didn't expect that. He didn't know that the demoness general held him in such high regard. They weren't familiar with each other. They'd only cooperated during occasional battles. They might have brushed shoulders once or twice, but even that might be an exaggeration. Unlike the rest of the audience, Kylan's expression was especially dark. He'd become the commander-in-chief and won the match against the palace. Declaring that Stephen was the only one who had the qualifications to become the sovereign was a direct insult to him. The underlying meaning behind Sylvie's words were, Kylan can't compare to Stephen. "General Estrella, are you implying that I'm inferior to the former commander?" Kylan demanded. "If you said I'm not qualified to be the sovereign, I'd admit it, because I'm not. But this I can't accept." His students backed him up. "Did you forget how Commander Gale defeated the palace? The former commander is a thing of the past. Why are you still mentioning him? Who hasn't heard of Commander Gale's achievements? Slandering him was uncalled for." Sylvie laughed in response. "Kylan, did you really think you won against the former commander? Did you forget how you took advantage of the situation?" Kylan narrowed his eyes. "What do you mean by that, Sylvie?" "You know what I mean. You had the upper hand. Is that really a victory you want to brag about? You were the victor, but you're a loser at heart. The former commander is thousands of times stronger than you. I'm not the only one who feels that way. If you don't believe me, why don't you ask the audience?" Kim didn't know who this General Estrella was, but she was moved by her bravery. Today's ceremony was being broadcasted live across the world. The United States' reputation was on the line.
"She's admirable,"
Victoria remarked. "I know. There's a lot at stake. Even Commander Gale is staying quiet. It takes courage to speak out against the crowd." Like Kim, Victoria, and many of the spectators, Stephen was also impressed by Sylvie's fearlessness. Kylan was infuriated that Sylvie was being so blunt when the cameras were rolling. "Are you determined to provoke me?" "Who has the time for that?" Sylvie shot back. "I'm talking about the Sovereign. You're the one who took it the wrong way and started an argument with me." Kylan had nothing to say to defend himself. The argument would end here if he didn't comment. Sylvie ignored him and looked at the Leviathan unit. "I've given my reasons. It's time for you to give us an explanation." The guests followed suit and stared at the Sovereign with anticipation. Sylvie's speech had won their approval. If the Sovereign had made significant contributions to the country, they wouldn't have any objections. But his background had been mysterious from the moment the government announced his position. It was like he'd come out of nowhere. If he couldn't convince the masses, then that was proof that he didn't deserve the position. The Leviathan unit assessed the questioning looks on the guests' faces. They were in a dilemma. It wasn't impossible to reveal the Sovereign's identity, but it would ruin the officials' plan to uproot the rest of the hidden factions. It would be much more difficult to make them reveal themselves if it was exposed that the former commander had become the Sovereign. The mystery surrounding the Sovereign's identity served as an added benefit to keep the hostile forces overseas in check. If no one knew his background, they'd have to be careful before making a move against the United States. This would prompt the hostile forces to investigate, but they would come up empty-handed every time, because the U.S. would keep Stephen's background top secret. People feared the unknown, and the hostile forces overseas weren't an exception. "What's the matter?" Sylvie asked when the Leviathan unit didn't respond. "Nothing to say for yourselves?" The Leviathan unit exchanged glances. They couldn't reveal Stephen's achievements right now. Those were the clues that the intelligence organizations overseas needed to figure out his identity. It would put their country at a disadvantage. Sylvie looked at the Sovereign on stage. "If the Leviathan unit doesn't want to answer, then I'll have to ask the Sovereign to personally give an explanation to the people of the U.S. Several guests supported her. "I agree with General Estrella. We need an explanation. We can't let someone with no background be our Sovereign." The Leviathan unit looked at each other, silently communicating with their eyes. They thought they'd made foolproof preparations to ensure that the ceremony would conclude without issue, but they'd underestimated Sylvie. There was only one way out of this. They turned to look at Stephen. The solution was actually very simple. Sylvie was questioning the Sovereign because she believed that Stephen was more qualified, which meant that the Sovereign had to be the one to resolve this issue. When their eyes met, Stephen immediately understood what was going on. "If it's a convincing explanation you want, I can give that to you. Those who don't think I'm qualified, raise your hands." Sylvie's hand shot up. Under her lead, many others in the audience raised their hands. Stephen scanned the crowd. "That's a lot of people." When the guests were about to make eye contact with him, they looked away. No one dared to look into his eyes. His aura was too intense. "Are you all convinced now?" Stephen asked. No one responded this time. One look was all the intimidation they needed to back down. Sylvie frowned in disapproval. These guests were cowards. "I can't accept this," she called out. "You're still not convinced, General Estrella?" "That's right. You can scare them with your profound cultivation, but not me." Stephen applauded her. "You're worthy of your title. All right, then I'd like to invite you to come on stage." The guests looked on in shock. Did the Sovereign want to have a showdown with General Estrella on stage? The Leviathan unit had the same thought. It was the easiest way to convince Sylvie, but it was too simple and crude. They couldn't understand what Stephen was thinking. Sylvie accepted the challenge fearlessly. "Sure, I'm not afraid of you." She stood up and walked towards the stage with long, confident strides. The media agency's director was still fuming after the cameraman had failed to snap a picture of the Sovereign's face, but his eyes lit up at the prospects of another opportunity. He could almost imagine the eye-catching headline making the news after the ceremony. The Demoness General versus the Sovereign. "I'll give you a chance to make up for your mistakes. Don't let me down this time." I got this, the cameraman said resolutely. He lifted his camera towards the stage. Sylvie walked up the stairs and reached the top of the stage. The Sovereign had retracted his aura, but up close, she could feel its intensity all over again. You're strong, but just because you have a profound cultivation base doesn't mean you're qualified to be the Sovereign. If you want to convince me, you'll have to defeat me first. When did I say I wanted to fight? Stephen replied. You don't? Then why did you call me down here? I called you here to let you judge my qualifications for yourself. Sylvie was doubtful. And how are you planning on convincing me? With your words alone? No. Stephen reached into his pocket and took out a manual. The cover was blank. There was an ancient feel to the parchment. It was a record of Hellcrown Palace's achievements. It continued records of the palace's past missions, including after Stephen became the Grand Master. The manual wasn't a comprehensive record. There was much more that couldn't be recorded on paper, but it would be enough to convince Sylvie. Stephen held out the manual. Take a look for yourself. The Leviathan unit realized what was happening. They hadn't read the manual, but they could guess what it contained. This was a much better method than duking it out with Sylvie. As expected of the Divine Sovereign, they nodded in approval. The spectators who were watching the ceremony from their screens were getting impatient. They couldn't get a clear view of the manual's contents. They attempted various magnifying methods, some of which involved equipment. The media agency's director was disappointed that it wasn't a fight, but they had to make the most of the situation. He instructed the cameraman to zoom in and get a close-up shot of the manual. The contents would surely be priceless. As soon as the director's instructions left his mouth, he received a call from the National Security Agency. The manual contains confidential secrets of the United States. Do not film or copy the contents in any way. If you ignore our warning, you'll have to face the consequences. He broke out in a cold sweat and quickly took back his instructions. He told the cameraman to adjust the camera lens. Endangering the national security of the U.S. was not a crime he could handle. Why are you being so mysterious? Sylvie muttered. She took the manual and flipped to the first page. A contemptuous look was on her face as she read, but as she progressed through the manual, her expression turned serious. Her brows furrowed in concentration, making sure to not miss a single detail. Her hands shook slightly, and her heart raced. The manual contained records that detailed the Sovereign's achievements. Some were top secret, and only the officials of the country were privy to them. As a high-ranking military officer of the U.S., Sylvie had heard some of these top-secret missions, but she didn't know who was behind them until now. It was the Sovereign standing in front of her. The contributions recorded in the manual more than qualified him for the position. After reaching the end, Sylvie closed it and took a deep breath. She respectfully held out the manual with 2 hands and lowered her head. I'm convinced. You're qualified to be the Divine Sovereign. It wasn't right for me to question you. I apologize for my mistake. The spectators were dumbfounded. Sylvie had been adamant about challenging the Sovereign a few moments ago. It was like she'd become a different person after reading the manual. What could have been recorded? General Estrella, can you tell us what was in the manual? A guest called out. No, I can't do that. Each record was a commendable merit, and as a high-ranking officer of the military, Sylvie understood that this was a plan that the officials of the country had devised to deal with the hidden factions. She would never expose their secret. The spectators were disappointed. Sylvie faced the audience. I know you're curious, but I can't tell you. If you want to know, then come down here and see for yourself. Her declaration earned a nod of approval from Stephen. As expected of General Estrella, he turned his gaze to the crowd and held up the manual. Those who'd like to read the manual are welcome to join us on stage. The crowd fell silent. No one was brave enough to speak up. Who would have the courage to lay eyes on the top secrets of the country? Is there no one? Stephen repeated. There was no response. Even Kylan didn't dare to act rashly. I gave you a chance. Don't blame me for not having the confidence to read the manual for yourselves. Stephen put the manual back into his pocket.
If no one wants to read it, then I'll put it away.
The audience was filled with regret. That was probably their one chance to read the mysterious manual. The opportunity wouldn't come again. But what could they do? No one had the confidence to check the United States' top secrets. The country's high-ranking officials were monitoring the ceremony somewhere at the heart of Annapolis. If I'm being honest, my heart dropped when Sylvie spoke up. I was worried the ceremony would be ruined. Our country would have lost face in front of the entire world. I never saw this coming. The sovereign's method of handling the situation was brilliant. He used the manual to convince Sylvie of his qualifications, and the mystery surrounding the contents will make our enemies fear us more. He killed 2 birds with 1 stone. They complimented Stephen's ability to adapt to the situation on the spot. The Leviathan unit, who was at the venue, was even more impressed. If it were anyone else but Stephen standing on stage today, the country would have become a laughingstock. Tahir gave the sovereign a thoughtful look. As expected of the man nominated to be the sovereign, he turned to the crowd and repeated his earlier announcement. That concludes the ceremony. The royal mask, imperial sword, and tiger crest will belong to the sovereign. He'll use them to protect the country and its people. Music began to play as the sovereign descended the stairs and left the stage. In a certain country overseas, their leaders were sitting around the TV and stupefied as the broadcast came to an end. Despite the unexpected situation during the ceremony, they still hadn't discovered the sovereign's identity. The former commander of the U.S. was formidable, but an even bigger threat had appeared. They ordered their intelligence agency to keep investigating the sovereign's identity. They had to find out. The same situation was happening in other countries across the ocean. Lionel was also impressed with Stephen's method of winning Sylvie over. It's a shame that I didn't get to see the sovereign's face. If I could meet him just once, I would have no regrets. Of course, he already knew who the sovereign was, but his sentiments were shared among the audience. We weren't allowed to meet the sovereign before the ceremony, but it's over, so we might catch a glimpse of him backstage, one of the guests said. A majority of the guests jumped out of their seats and raced backstage. To their disappointment, the sovereign had already left. They could only walk away and sulk. When everyone rushed backstage like a swarm of bees, there were 2 people who stayed seated. One was Kylan. The sovereign's aura was all he needed to know. He had no intention of challenging him. The second person was Sylvie. She'd read the manual, so heading backstage was meaningless. Just as she was about to leave, Kylan called out to her. General Estrella, please wait a minute. Sylvie stopped and turned around. What's the matter? Do you want to settle the score? Your position is higher than mine, but I won't back down from a challenge. In terms of ranking of strength, Sylvie was slightly inferior to Kylan, but that didn't deter her from having a match with him. Why so stiff? I didn't call out to you to have a fight. Then why are you looking for me? Oh, I get it. You want to know what I read in the manual. No, I'm not interested, Kylan said. The sovereign's aura had been enough for him. The manual's contents were useless. Then what do you want? Follow me. We're going to see someone. Kylan didn't wait for Sylvie to agree before walking away. She groaned in annoyance, but followed him anyway. To her surprise, the person Kylan brought her to was Stephen. Sylvie didn't know Stephen was here. If he was here to attend the ceremony, why hadn't she seen him in the audience? Stephen was also surprised to see them. He hadn't expected Kylan and Sylvie to be the first people he'd run into after the ceremony ended. Stephen, I'm here to formally request a challenge with you. General Estrella had 3 reasons why she didn't agree with the sovereign. One of them implied that I'm inferior to you, and I'm not convinced. So, you want to challenge a disabled person? Stephen asked. Of course not. I want to challenge the person you were when you were at your peak. I'll help you recover as soon as possible. Then, I'd like to have a fair duel with you. Kylan gestured to Sylvie. I asked General Estrella to come with me as a witness to my challenge. Stephen sighed at his stubborn and relentless personality. I don't think it'll be much of a challenge. Kylan frowned. What are you trying to say? Sylvie interjected and greeted Stephen. It's a pleasure to meet you, Commander Adams. Kylan's expression darkened. Stephen shook his head.
Commander Gale is the commander-in-chief now.
To me, you'll always be the commander, Sylvie said. I'll do my best to help you recover. If you win against Kylan, you'll be able to restore your reputation. Kylan was seething. He'd won against Stephen once, but Sylvie already thought that he would lose the second time around. Her opinion reflected the public opinion about the current commander-in-chief. Negative criticisms had remained even after he'd defeated the palace. Kylan made up his mind. He would head back to the Chevalier family and search for a medicine that was more effective than the Golden Sage salve. I'll use all my resources to help Stephen recover as soon as he can. I want him to return to his peak condition. You'll have nothing to say after I defeat him again. Then I'll be waiting for your performance, Sylvie said. Kylan, I know you have a deep background and have special resources at your disposal. Why don't we compete and see who can help Stephen recover faster? Kylan gave her a thoughtful look. Okay, let's do it. He didn't know exactly where she was from, but he had a guess. Sylvie was young, and she'd swept aside the obstacles on the battlefield and achieved the same rank he used to have in record time. This wasn't an accomplishment that outsiders could achieve. For example, the Adams family had spared nothing to raise and train Johann, but he'd never been able to reach their level. Kylan didn't have confirmation, but his guess was correct. Sylvie wasn't from the outside world. She was like Kylan. They were both from a hidden clan. She was a member of the Estrella family. She was born with an extraordinary talent for martial arts, but the concept of women being inferior to men was deeply rooted among the hidden clans. The aristocrats had always been the world of men. It didn't matter how skilled Sylvie became. She would never be trusted with an important position in the Estrella family. Her family had chosen male candidates over her even when they were less experienced and talented. Sylvie was tired of being treated unfairly, so she decided to leave home and experience the outside world to prove the Estrella family that women were just as capable as men. When she first set foot in the outside, she relied on her profound cultivation of martial arts to roam the battlefield and slaughter her enemies. She became famous fairly quickly and became the only female general of the army. Since Sylvie was from a hidden clan, she had a wide selection of ancient medical resources to choose from. Kylan wanted to know whether the Chevalier family was superior or inferior to Sylvie's family. Then it's settled, Sylvie said when Kylan agreed readily. This isn't just a competition between you and Stephen, it's also a competition between you and me. I hope you won't disappoint me. Rest assured, I'll use the highest quality medicines to treat him. I'll show you that I'm not inferior in strength or resources. Sylvie raised her hand. High five as an oath. Kylan nodded solemnly and high-fived her. They were so caught up in their own world that Stephen was reduced to a spectator on the sidelines. He was the main person involved in their competition, but he hadn't been able to get a word in. He watched them helplessly. As if sensing Stephen's stare, Sylvie met his gaze. You heard what we said. Kylan will do his best to help you recover, and I will do the same. I won't give up until I have you take back your position as the commander-in-chief. Kylan and Stephen exchanged a glance. They were both in sync for once. They were both wondering why Sylvie was so adamant to make Stephen the commander again. The Leviathan unit came over while they were chatting. The ceremony had ended. The Divine Sovereign was the Grand Marshal of the United States Army. All high-ranking officers of the military had to meet him. The Leviathan unit was here to ask Kylan and Sylvie to head over. Stephen, the Sovereign's calling for us, Sylvie said. Wait here. Kylan and I will be back soon to finish our discussion. Stephen watched them go, suddenly feeling drained of energy from their antics.
Looks like I'll have to teach them a lesson. If they spend all their time on me, how are they going to defend the country?
If you ask me, they just want to be friends with you, Noor teased.
I highly doubt that.
Noor shrugged and pushed Stephen's wheelchair to a designated room that the Leviathan had prepared for him to change back into his uniform. He draped the same coat he'd worn on stage over his shoulders and put on the mask. A sword was at his waist, and the tiger crest was in his hand. The big shots of the military had been waiting for quite a while. The 4 great generals, the military base commanders, the 4 gatekeepers, the commander-in-chief, the general of the army, and the others were present. They were the elites of the army who protected the peace of the country. The guards standing outside announced the sovereign's arrival. Everyone stood up. They saluted and greeted him in unison when he walked into the room. They felt his aura immediately. "No need for formalities, everyone. You're the pillar of the United States. Under my command, you'll continue to carry out your duties as you always have." "Understood," they replied. "I don't have any specific instructions for you, but I do have something I'd like to say." They stood straighter and more solemnly, prepared to listen intently. "Everyone here is an important member of our country's military. All of you are elites. Our duty is to uphold the peace. I hope you'll stay focused and carry out your responsibilities instead of getting caught up in useless personal conflicts." Kylan and Sylvie's hearts skipped a beat. The target of his warning was all too obvious. The sovereign was talking about them. They'd agreed to compete for Stephen a short while ago. How had the sovereign caught wind of their competition already? Could it be? Unease gnawed at them. A horrifying thought crossed their minds. Had the sovereign been watching them? As Stephen spoke, he glanced at Kylan and Sylvie to gauge their reactions. He was satisfied to see them looking uneasy. Engaging in useless competitions wouldn't do anything for the country's security. His lecture worked, so he didn't plan to stay longer. "That's all I have to say. In the future, I'll contact you if I have any instructions." "Yes, sir." They saluted him, watched him leave, and waited a few minutes before dispersing. Sylvie and Kylan were the only ones left in the room. She called out to him before he could leave. "What is it?" Kylan said. "Haven't you always had a lot to say when someone's in a higher position than you? Why didn't you say a single word during the ceremony?" Sylvie had forgotten about the sharp contrast between Kylan's competitive personality and his decision to stay quiet during the ceremony until now. That wasn't like him. "What's there to say?" Kylan retorted. "You felt it too. His aura is out of this world. I admit that I'm inferior to him." "But didn't you say that no one on the outside can match up to you?" "Haven't you thought about it yet? It doesn't make sense for an outsider to have an aura like that. But what if he's not from the outside? What if he's an aristocrat like you and me? The hidden clans are the only ones who are capable of reaching that level of cultivation." Sylvie nodded in understanding. That was why Kylan hadn't made a sound during the ceremony. He'd guessed the sovereign's origins, but which clan did the sovereign come from? After meeting the elites of the military, Stephen was preparing to head back to Washington, D.C. with Noor. They wouldn't be taking a private plane home. The ceremony had just ended. The sovereign had just taken over his position. It would be disrespectful to steal the thunder. The other guests felt the same way. It was an unspoken rule to return using other means. Stephen asked Noor to find an off-road vehicle for them, and soon they were on their way home. "Congratulations, Mr. Adams," Noor said as he drove. "You don't have half of the world's influence and wealth anymore. You have more than half."
That's true. The world's influence and wealth are divided into shares. The U.S., Warhawk, Hellcrown Palace, and the Eastern Hemisphere each have a share. Becoming the sovereign makes it more convenient for me. I have more authority than when I was the commander.
There was a canyon on the road from Annapolis to Washington, D.C. There were no detours or other paths around it. Anyone who took this road had to pass through the canyon. At this time, a large group of martial artists were waiting at the canyon. "Did you investigate?" the leader of the group asked. "Is that person going to pass through here?" "Yes. We'll run into him if we wait in ambush here." "Good. Everyone, prepare yourselves. Soon we'll be known as the group who took down the United States' former commander-in-chief." "Is that necessary?" someone asked. "He's an outsider, and he's disabled." "Whether he's disabled or at his peak makes no difference, but it'll be a hassle if he escapes." Meanwhile, Noor was fast approaching the canyon. Stephen was in the back seat, leaning back with his eyes closed. He was wondering how he could find Devil Hall's mastermind. He'd taken them down twice, but they were mysterious and unpredictable. He knew just as much about them as he had during the war. Devil Hall had attacked twice. Their tenacity was evident. If he didn't get rid of them completely, there was a possibility that they would revive and wreak havoc again. They posed a huge threat to the country. "Mr. Adams, we've reached the Eagle Stream," Norr said, pulling him from his thoughts. Stephen looked out the window. A narrow path through a canyon came into view up ahead. This was the only road leading back to the district.
Eagle Stream. It's a valley with a long history, Stephen mused. In the past thousands of years, there were many who died here from territorial disputes. Norr, what are the chances of our enemies setting up an ambush here?
Norr considered it. It was hard to say, but the risk was there. It wasn't impossible. Stephen was pretending to be injured, but he was a threat as long as he was alive. Numerous assassins had infiltrated the U.S. after his duel with Kylan to dispose of him. The possibility couldn't be ruled out. As if on cue, a rumble rang out through the valley. Large rocks tumbled down the steep cliffs and headed straight for them. "Mr. Adams, are you a prophet by any chance? There really is an ambush."
"Speed up," Stephen instructed. "We're heading to the end."
"On it." Norr was grinning as he stepped on the accelerator. Adrenaline pumped through his veins. The more unexpected the situation, the more exhilarating it was. Their car shot through the rolling rocks and made it out on the other side. Not even a second later, Norr slammed on the brakes. The road up ahead was blocked with rocks.
"Looks like they've prepared," Stephen said. "It's about time they show themselves."
As he predicted, a large group emerged from the shadows and surrounded the car.
"They spent so much effort setting up this ambush. We should at least go out and greet them."
Norr nodded and stepped out of the car. Stephen did the same, not bothering to hide his recovery. They sensed the other party's aura immediately. All of them were above the Grandmaster realm. It was rare, but not impossible to encounter 3 or 5 Grandmasters at once. But a large group like this was out of the ordinary. "It's obvious they came looking for trouble." Norr rolled his shoulder, itching for a fight. "I can handle it."
"I sense a familiar aura coming from them," Stephen said. "I've only felt this from Jameson and his 4 students. These people might be from the Chevalier family."
Norr's grin widened. "They're from a hidden clan?" He'd been wanting to compete with the hidden clans as martial artists, but there was never an opportunity. The group had strange expressions on their faces as they approached. Their attention was on Stephen. "Weren't you disabled? When did you recover?"
"Sounds like you're familiar with me."
"The former Commander-in-Chief of the U.S., known as the strongest martial artist in the outside world. Who in the Chevalier family wouldn't know you?" the leader of the group said.
"So you are from the Chevalier family. Why are you here and stopping me from getting to the district?"
"You already know our background, so we'll get straight to the point. We have a question for you. Tell us everything you know." The leader of the group spoke arrogantly, as if there was no room for questions. Many aristocrats were like him. Outsiders were inferior, and they were at their beck and call. Norr didn't tolerate any disrespect towards Stephen. "Ever heard of manners? If your parents never taught you to be polite when making a request, then let me educate you." Stephen stopped him before he could charge over.
"Wait, let them ask their question."
The leader smirked. "Wise decision. Several members of our family were killed. We're here to investigate."
"And?"
Stephen prompted. "Their martial artists weren't that great, but they were one of us. My question is, are you related to their deaths? They came outside because of you. It's only right to assume that you're behind their deaths. Don't even think of lying. If you do, a fate worse than death will be waiting for you." The other members felt the same way. Whether Stephen was injured or recovered, he was an outsider, and he would never be a match for an aristocrat.
"Someone from the Chevalier family who died outside. Are you referring to Jameson Chevalier?"
"If you know his name, then it's proof that you were involved. You were there when they died. What happened?"
"Are you curious? I doubt you'll believe me."
"Who do you think we are? We're from a hidden clan. What can't we accept from the outside world?"
Well, if you insist, then I'll tell you. I killed Jameson and his 4 students.
As Stephen had guessed, the Chevalier family found the revelation unbelievable. They'd been investigating for a while, but they hadn't found any leads. The higher-ups of the family were racking their brains over this issue. They'd sent them to find the former commander and interrogate him. He was the most skilled martial artist on the outside, and he had a wide range of connections. There was nothing he didn't know. They could at least get some leads out of him. Never had they expected that the former commander, who was widely known to be disabled after his duel with the current commander, would be the culprit and openly admit it. They recovered from their shock and fixed Stephen with a deadly glare. "How dare you lay a hand on a member of our family?" the leader demanded.
Was his life that valuable? Stephen asked. He harmed too many innocents to count. He's also conspired with our country's enemy and manipulated the duel between me and Kylan. Don't you think his death was deserved? You could think of me of killing him as delivering justice.
The Chevalier family began to clamor as if they'd suffered a huge grievance. "Don't be ridiculous. The rules of you outsiders have nothing to do with us." "They make themselves sound like the superior species," Noor said.
"The hidden clans value strength," Stephen explained. "The strong speak the truth, while the words of the weak hold no weight."
The leader threw a dagger to the ground. "You're the former commander, so I'll give you a chance to redeem yourself and save your family. I don't want to get my hands dirty, so finish the job yourself."
"Do you know where we are?" Stephen asked. "This is the United States. While you're here, you should abide by our laws. You have no authority to implement your own rules."
The leader laughed. "You're not the commander anymore. It's you who doesn't have the authority to talk about laws and rules. And to make it clear, our family has never been restricted by your laws."
"I heard Kylan Gale replaced you as the new commander," someone spoke up.
"Haven't you heard? His martial arts are average in our family. There are people like him everywhere. Even the weakest member of our family can rise to the top among outsiders."
"I don't care whether you live in seclusion or mingle with the outside," Stephen said. "But if you ventured outside, then you must abide by the laws of the outside world. That's the only way we can coexist. If you endanger my people's lives, then I'll have to do something about it. Jameson is your example."
The Chevalier family was used to running amok. They weren't used to being talked down to like this. The leader frowned. "I gave you a chance, and you didn't take it. You've admitted your crime, so there's no need to investigate further. We'll kill you and bring your head back as retribution." The rest of the family shouted with righteous indignation. They were even angry when Stephen and Noor scoffed. "What's with your reaction?" the leader demanded.
"You're overestimating yourselves," Stephen said. "I suggest you head back and return with a larger group. You won't be enough."
The Chevalier family looked at each other. None of them could tolerate an outsider looking down on them. The leader ordered his group to attack. Anyone who insulted their family would be killed. Noor stepped in front of Stephen. "You're not qualified to fight my boss. I'll handle you by myself." That got the Chevalier family riled up even more. It wasn't as simple as looking down on them anymore. This was blatant humiliation. They rarely left seclusion. They couldn't accept being treated this way the moment they set foot outside. "If you want to fight, then we'll give you one," the leader spat. "Stop wasting time," Noor said impatiently. "What's it going to be? One-on-one or a group fight?" The leader didn't let his anger cloud his judgment. He had to maintain his family's honor. "I'll send one of us." "I've changed my mind," Noor said. "That'll take too long. I'll take you on, all at once." "If you want to die so badly, then I'll grant your wish." The leader beckoned to his group, and they lunged for Noor. Stephen leaned against the car to watch the scuffle. The Chevalier family surrounded Noor, expecting the fight to be over in a second, but none of them were able to get close to him. After defending for 3 moves, Noor began his counterattack. In a few seconds, bodies began to fall. The longer he fought, the stronger his aura became. It flooded the narrow valley like a surging river. The Chevalier family had no chance of resisting. The remaining members retreated. The leader grew nervous. They weren't the elite members of the family, but they were Grand Masters, and their martial arts were considered above average. But an outsider was holding their own against their group. This was beyond their imagination. "Is that all you've got? Come on!" Noor shouted. He released a wave of his inner energy that infused his voice. It shattered the Chevalier family's eardrums. Blood flowed from their ears. "A hidden clan? An aristocrat? You're nothing worth mentioning." Noor charged into the group of remaining members. They were on the ground in less than 10 seconds, including their leader. They were still breathing. He hadn't killed them. The Chevalier family had been skeptical when Stephen claimed to have killed Jameson and his 4 students, but it seemed that he hadn't been lying. "I never expected you to have such a powerful bodyguard," the leader gritted out. "That's how you survived until now." Stephen had recovered somehow, but it wasn't easy for a martial artist with extensive cultivation to regain his full strength. He had to have recovered recently, and he couldn't have returned to his peak condition. That was why his bodyguard was fighting for him. "Mr. Adams, how do you want to deal with them?" Nora asked. "Want me to get rid of them?"
No, let them return to the Chevalier family.
What? Nora wasn't the only one surprised. The Chevalier family was too. They thought Stephen would tell his bodyguard to kill them all. The leader was in disbelief. "Are you really letting us go back?"
"Yeah, I'll let you go,"
Stephen confirmed. "Your bodyguard did a number on us. If we return, our family won't let you off. Aren't you worried that they'll come after you?"
"My life has been threatened for as long as I can remember. I'm not afraid of anyone. I'm letting you go so you can pass on a message. Tell the higher-ups of your family that they're free to come and go outside, but when they're here, they'll have to abide by our country's laws. I've set an example with Jameson and his students."
"You're braver than you look. Okay, I'll deliver your message. I won't leave a single word out, but be prepared. The rest of our family will be coming for you." The rest of the group started yammering. "We are aristocrats. Outsiders can't compare to us. Don't think you can do whatever you want just because you have a skilled bodyguard. The only future for those who look down on our family is death." Noor grabbed the person who was closest to him and threw him a few feet away. "Get lost already." These so-called grandmasters had just experienced Stephen's bodyguard's martial arts. They were worried that he would go back on his boss's word, but at the same time, they couldn't stop chattering, even as they ran off. The Chevalier family retreated. They didn't look back until they put some distance between them and Stephen. "I never thought I'd see the day when our family would lose to an outsider. Who could have imagined that he had such a talented martial artist by his side? He would be among the top ranks even in our family. But why would someone as skilled as him choose to protect someone so useless?" "What's so strange about that? Stephen is useless now, but he used to be the former commander. It's normal for him to have a wide fan base. It's not that surprising for one of those die-hard fans to come forward and offer to be his bodyguard." They discussed for a while before coming to a conclusion. Stephen had survived all this time because of his bodyguard. "We're no match for Stephen's bodyguard. What should we do? He's the culprit behind Jameson and his students' deaths." "Let's head back for now," the leader of the group said. "We should report this to the head of the family. A martial artist who's that skilled can't be allowed to run wild outside. We need to come up with a way to restrain him." The rest of the members agreed. "Right, we should go back. If the higher-ups take action, Stephen and his bodyguard will be done for."
"Mr. Adams, why did you let that trash go?"
Nora asked when the Chevalier family was out of sight. Aside from the previous Grand Palace Master, the person he respected the most and had pledged his loyalty to was Stephen. He couldn't tolerate anyone disrespecting him.
"You said it yourself," Stephen said with a smile. "They're trash. You're the Northern Guardian of Hellcrown Palace. There's no need for you to lower yourself to their level. Besides, I have another reason for letting them off."
Understanding dawned on Noor. "You mean—"
"Yeah, I want to lure the snake out of its hole. The factions abroad aren't the only ones we need to find. There are hostile organizations right under our noses.
They've hidden themselves for a long time. Chaos will overrun the country if they show themselves when we're not prepared.
Stephen didn't know if the hidden clans were the organizations he was looking for or if they were plotting to overturn their country, but he would get his answer once he lured them out of hiding. The hidden clans possessed unfathomable strength. If anyone were targeting the country, it would be them. I understand. You want to use the Chevalier family as a catalyst to encourage the ones we're really looking for to reveal themselves. It'll be easier for us to investigate once they're out in the open.
That's right. You saw what they're like. They're proud of their background and look down on our laws. I should take this opportunity to bring them out of hiding and teach them a lesson.
It's a brilliant plan. I heard the aristocrats possess unimaginable martial arts. I can't wait to fight them. Stephen laughed.
The chance will come sooner than you think. But first, let's head back to the district.
Understood, Mr. Adams. They arrived in Washington, D.C. a few hours later. Before heading home, Stephen gave Kim a call and told her that he'd be back soon.
Mom, Stephen's back in the district, Kim said after ending the call. Let's wait for him outside with Valeria. Also, you know how we didn't see him in the audience? I don't want to hurt his self-esteem. Victoria caught on. If Stephen pretended like he was a guest in the audience, they would play along. A little white lie couldn't hurt.
Okay, I got it.
Kim and Victoria took Valeria with them and waited in front of the villa for Stephen. Sometime later, a jeep pulled up to the house. Noor helped Stephen out of the car. Valeria ran as fast as her little legs could take her. She jumped into Stephen's arms.
Daddy, I saw you on TV.
She'd recognized Stephen the moment he came on stage, but Kim and Victoria didn't believe her.
Was Daddy handsome?
Stephen asked with a smile. Valeria nodded seriously.
You were the prettiest person in the room.
Kim stifled a laugh. Where had her daughter learned that compliment? Stephen was also amused by her praises.
Daddy didn't come back empty-handed. I have gifts for you.
Valeria's eyes sparkled.
What did you get me?
Noor, can you take out the packages in the trunk?
Okay. Noor walked to the back of the Jeep and took out 3 well-packaged gift boxes. You brought this many souvenirs from when you went to Annapolis? Kim asked curiously.
I didn't buy them. The officials gave these to me to commemorate the ceremony.
Stephen unwrapped the boxes. The gifts inside shone even brighter than the packaging. There was a gold medal, a limited edition stamp with the ceremony as the theme, and a picture of the sovereign's coat that was personally signed by the divine sovereign himself. The 3 items were delicate and worth a fortune. The starting price would be at least $100 million for each one. Stephen introduced the items and said,
This was the first ceremony to appoint the sovereign in 300 years. Every guest received these gifts. I took 3 sets for you, Mom, and Valeria.
Kim's faith in the country was restored. She hadn't seen Stephen in the audience during the broadcast, but he'd brought back these gifts from the ceremony. As an elite in the business industry, she could tell with one glance that they were priceless. Their value couldn't be measured with a monetary amount. This was proof that the officials of the country hadn't forgotten about Stephen. He'd received the treatment he deserved. Valeria held the box preciously, as if she would never let go of it.
You look like you're having fun.
They looked over and saw Rebecca. After the ceremony ended, she made a trip from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C. to expose Stephen's lie. That would drive a wedge between him and Kim. Rebecca, what are you doing here? Kim asked, frowning. Rebecca didn't respond. She looked at the box in Valeria's hands.
Are you that gullible? Do you really think your husband brought back genuine gifts for the ceremony?
What are you talking about?
I heard these gifts are limited edition. Only the guests who attended the ceremony received them. I'm sure you watched the event on TV. The cameras showed the audience. Did you see Stephen in the audience?
When Kim and Victoria didn't say anything, Rebecca continued triumphantly. I didn't think so.
I saw Daddy, Valeria chimed in. He was on TV.
You little brat. Kim, how is your husband educating your daughter? He's already taught her to lie.
I'm not lying,
Valeria protested.
I'm telling the truth.
Rebecca was even more pleased with herself.
Hear that? She's so young, but she's lying through her teeth. Stephen wasn't a guest. Where did he get these souvenirs from?
She turned to Stephen.
Nothing to say for yourself because I just exposed you? I don't mind. You can try and defend yourself. Prove to me that these gifts are real.
What's there to prove? Stephen asked. If you think they're fake, then keep thinking that. I won't stop you.
These are for our collection, Kim said. It's none of your business whether they're real or fake.
Rebecca wasn't expecting to lose the argument after gaining the upper hand.
Fine, you'll regret this, Kim.
She left in a huff. On her way to the airport, she couldn't stop thinking about it. That got her even angrier. She took out her phone and called Helen.
Stephen brought back gifts for the ceremony? Helen asked with interest. And they're fake?
She turned on the speaker so Gordon and Mavis heard what Rebecca had said. They crowded around Helen's phone. They'd retired from the army, so they felt a special connection with the ceremony. If they managed to get their hands on souvenirs from the ceremony, they could show them off in their circles. Helen was skeptical.
Are you sure?
Of course I am, Rebecca said confidently.
Those gifts were only given out to the guests. Stephen wasn't in the audience. How did he attend the ceremony? He lied to Kim and brought back those fake gifts as proof.
Helen was partially convinced, but Gordon shook his head.
Rebecca, you should be careful of what you say. The ceremony was a big event. The guests might not be the only ones who received the gifts. They could have given them out to the camera crew, reporters, or volunteers. Stephen could have gotten lucky and gotten his hands on genuine gifts.
That piqued Helen's interest again. Mavis was also enthusiastic. This would be a golden opportunity for them if Stephen really brought back genuine gifts from the ceremony. They hadn't been invited, but taking the gifts for themselves would be enough for them to flaunt for the rest of their lives.
The important question is, how can we confirm if the souvenirs are real? Helen asked.
I have an old comrade in Washington, D.C., Gordon said. I'll contact him.
They engaged in a long discussion before hanging up.
You heard that, right, Rebecca? Go back to Stephen's house and try out his method.
Okay. Rebecca ended the call and told the driver to turn around. She bought several identification tools from shops nearby. On her way back to the villa, she wondered how she could convince Stephen to let her verify the gifts. When she arrived, she saw Kim and Victoria leaving the house. She waited for them to pass before tiptoeing inside. Valeria was in the yard, playing with the gift box. Stephen wasn't around. Rebecca approached her with a smile.
Hi, Valeria. Your aunt is here to visit again. Why are you back? Valeria asked vigilantly.
Rebecca looked around.
Where's your father? He's sleeping.
I see. I came back to play with you.
I don't want to play with Auntie. You're a bad guy.
Rebecca's smile faltered, but she kept it in place. Who was raising this child? What are Kim and Stephen teaching her? She resisted the urge to roll her eyes.
Valeria, it's not nice to turn your auntie away. I came all the way here to help you. I don't need your help.
But I know how to prove whether those gifts are real or fake. Valeria perked up.
Really?
Stephen hadn't said anything when Rebecca accused those gifts of being fake. Now she was back and saying she had a way to prove their authenticity. Any child would be curious.
Yeah, I'm your auntie. I wouldn't lie to you. Valeria, can you put the box on the ground so I can examine them?
Rebecca took out the items she'd bought.
Look, I even brought an appraisal tool.
Valeria was convinced. She placed the box on the floor and opened the lid. Rebecca picked up her tools and carefully appraised each item. She started with the commemorative medal, then the limited edition stamp, and lastly, the picture that was personally signed by the sovereign. The medal is real, the anti-counterfeiting code for the stamps is military certified, and the signature is also real. Rebecca was stunned. All 3 souvenirs were genuine, and Stephen had brought back 3 sets.
Is that true? Valeria asked.
Rebecca wasn't sure.
Let me try again.
She repeated the same operation and received the same result.
They really are real,
Rebecca exclaimed. But Stephen was a good-for-nothing. Where did he get these? He didn't just bring back 1 box, he brought back 3. If Valeria's box was real, then Kim and Victoria's sets were probably also real. Rebecca almost snatched the box from Valeria's hands, but she stopped herself when she remembered that Stephen was inside taking a nap. She quietly left the house and called Helen to report.
I didn't think it was true, Helen said.
How in the world did Stephen get his hands on those gifts? Gordon asked. Since when was he that capable?
Even if he is capable, so what? Mavis said. Souvenirs from the ceremony are valuable. They're a waste to leave them with him. He wouldn't know the true value of those gifts, Helen agreed. They belong with us.
Everyone in the country knew that the ceremony to appoint a sovereign was a rare-to-come-by event. A souvenir would definitely be priceless. The starting price would be $100 million, but there would be many people fighting for it, which would raise the price further. Giving such valuable items to a child like they were toys was a waste.
Grandma, why don't I go back and take it from Valeria? Rebecca suggested.
Helen, Gordon, and Mavis were the heads of the Cassidy and Haynes families. Retrieving the gifts would win their favor, and her status in the family would rise.
Don't be rash, Helen said. You won't be able to deal with them alone, especially Stephen. She's right, don't be hasty, Mavis added.
Okay, I'll wait for you. Helen and Mavis didn't trust her, but Rebecca didn't take offense. The Cassidy and Haynes families had targeted Stephen more than once, and they'd returned defeated every single time. And they were right. She was only one person. She wouldn't be able to handle him alone.
We should prepare to leave, Mavis said. We need those gifts as soon as possible. Otherwise, I won't be able to sleep. Time is of the essence. Let's hurry to Washington, D.C., Helen instructed.
Helen, Gordon, Mavis, and Harry rushed to Washington, D.C. When their flight landed, Helen stopped Harry just as he was about to drive them to Stephen's house.
Wait, we can't go empty-handed. We're asking them for a favor. It's impolite to visit without bringing anything.
You've really thought it through, Gordon said.
Let's go to the mall and buy some toys that little girls will like, Mavis suggested.
Harry drove them to the largest shopping mall in the district. They brought some toys for little girls and set off for the villa. Valeria was still playing alone in the yard, but the box wasn't with her. Helen put on the friendliest smile she could muster when she entered.
Valeria, why are you alone? We came to see you.
Valeria gave them a wary look. She was young and she didn't know much, but she'd seen the way these people bullied her mother.
Valeria, why are you acting so distant? We're a family. Look, I brought you presents.
Helen waved Rebecca over. Rebecca piled a vast assortment of boxes on the ground. They were packed with clothes and toys.
This is all for you.
Valeria eyed the presents curiously, but her parents warned her not to get too close to strangers. Helen and the others felt awkward when Valeria didn't run up to the presents like they were expecting her to. Just as they were wondering how to get close to her, Stephen, Kim, and Victoria came out to the yard.
Grandma, why are you here? Kim asked.
We came to see you, Mavis answered with a smile.
Look, we even bought presents for your daughter.
Mavis took Valeria's hand in hers, acting like they were close. She pointed at the pile of presents.
Valeria, you can choose whatever you like.
Stephen and Kim looked at each other, sharing the same thought. They were all too familiar with the Cassidy and Haynes families. Helen and the others would never be friendly without a purpose. They had to be here with ulterior motives.
We heard Stephen just returned from the ceremony in Annapolis, so we came to visit, Gordon said.
We also heard he brought back souvenirs, Helen said. Can we take a look?
You're well informed, Stephen remarked.
What's wrong with that? We're all family here.
If you say so. You'll be the first people I inform when I have good news. Is that good enough for you?" Helen and the others ignored Stephen's sarcasm. Their eyes were on the prize, the 3 sets of souvenirs from the ceremony. Stephen and Kim were originally planning to send them away after a brief chat, but Helen had been direct and asked to see the gifts. It was clear that she wouldn't be leaving until she saw them with her own eyes. Kim went inside and took one of the gift boxes to the yard. Mavis immediately let go of Valeria's hand at the sight of the lavish wrapping paper. "Open it, so we can see what's inside." Helen gestured for Gordon to examine the items first. He understood her intention. She wanted him to verify their authenticity. Gordon's hand shook as he picked up the medal and inspected it. He had a military background, so he could tell a real and fake medal apart.
"It's real."
Helen brightened.
"Let me see."
She didn't wait for Gordon to hand it over before she took it from him. She ran her fingers over the creases with fascination. "The craftsmanship is exquisite. If only I could have one."
"Receiving a gift at the ceremony is the highest honor. Who wouldn't want one?"
If it wasn't clear before, it was glaringly obvious now. They were here for the gift boxes that Stephen had brought back from Annapolis. Helen and Gordon's hints had made their intentions clear, so Mavis was impatient when Stephen and Kim didn't have a reaction.
"Stephen, I heard you attended the ceremony. Did you bring back more than 1 box?"
"I brought back 3. 1 for Kim, 1 for my mother, and 1 for Valeria."
Mavis, Gordon, and Helen exchanged glances. That was perfect. There were 3 of them and 3 sets of gifts.
"Stephen, these gifts are extremely precious," Mavis said.
"Valeria is a child. What does she know?
"Giving them to her is a waste. If you give me Valeria's gift, I'll give her all the toys and clothes I bought. I'll also give her an annual card for the amusement park. Don't you think that'll be more suitable than these items?"
Mavis's desire for the gifts was on full display. Stephen thought they would at least have some tact and subtly ask for a box. He never expected her to be so upfront and demand it. Kim was also taken aback by Mavis's lack of shame. Elders should be respected, but she wasn't sure that applied to Mavis at this moment. With Mavis taking the lead, Helen dropped all pretenses. She looked at Victoria.
"Stephen brought back a box for you, but it'd be useless in your hands. It'd be better if you gave me your share. Of course, it won't be for free. I've collected quality goods over the years. Come with me to Los Angeles and you can pick out whatever you want."
Helen was a collector, but nothing could compare to the souvenirs from the ceremony. Gordon didn't want to fall behind.
"Kim, why don't you give your share to me? You're young. You don't have the experience to appreciate these items."
Rebecca supported them.
"The boxes are meaningless to you. You don't have a military background, but Grandma and Grandpa are different. Only someone from the military can truly appreciate these gifts."
"Especially Valeria," Harry added. "She doesn't know anything about their value. Giving her a box is like giving her a toy. She'll get bored of it eventually and toss it aside. That would be blasphemy." Stephen and Kim exchanged yet another glance. They were talking as if the gifts belonged to them. Did they have any concept of shame?
"Stephen, Kim, think about it," Helen said. "These gifts have a special meaning for those with a military background."
"We have a wide collection of antiques," Gordon said. "Feel free to visit us in Santa Ana and choose whatever you want."
Mavis tugged his sleeve, signaling for him to stay quiet.
"It doesn't have to be an antique. We can buy these gifts from you. Name a price. If it's appropriate, then I'll consider it a deal."
Some of the antiques in Gordon's collection were priceless. It'd be more than worth it to spend the money instead.
"Looks like you're determined to take these gifts," Stephen said.
"What's with your attitude?" Rebecca asked. "You went all the way to Annapolis, but you didn't bring anything back for your elders. That's disrespectful."
"These gifts aren't like the vegetables in your garden. They're not yours to bargain with. I brought them back for Kim, Valeria, and my mother."
Helen swallowed her anger.
"Think it over before you make a decision. We can give you our collectibles or money in return for the gifts."
"No, we won't be giving them away," Stephen said.
"Kim's maternal and paternal family came over to personally make their request," Rebecca said. You should at least hear them out.
Stephen was indifferent.
Whatever you say. Anyways, you can forget about the gifts.
Grandma, Grandpa, I understand how you feel, Kim said. But these are the gifts Stephen brought back from Annapolis for us. It's not right to hand them over. If there's nothing else you came to talk about, then please head back. The 5 of them had no choice but to leave. Mavis was reluctant to head home.
Are we just going to leave? We didn't accomplish anything. Our trip is wasted. No, I need that box, Helen said. I can't sit still knowing that Kim, Victoria, and Valeria have something so precious in their possession without understanding its true value.
Gordon sighed.
To think Stephen would be so ignorant.
Helen had a flash of inspiration.
He won't listen to us, but what if Natalie and Kyle ask them?
That might just work, Mavis said. They're Kim's parents and Stephen's in-laws. He won't be able to refuse. I'll call them. After contacting Natalie and Kyle, the 5 of them spent the night at the hotel in the district to wait for them. They would only stop once they achieved their goal. The next morning, Kyle and Natalie arrived in the district. They were as indignant as Helen and the others when they heard the situation. The 7 of them rushed to the villa.
What's the meaning of this, Stephen?
Natalie demanded as soon as she entered the house.
I heard you went to Annapolis to attend the ceremony. You brought back a souvenir for your mother, but what about your mother-in-law and father-in-law?
Mom, Dad, why are you here? Kim asked in surprise. It was a rhetorical question. She understood the moment she saw Natalie and Kyle walk in with Helen and the others.
If we didn't come over, you would have just let this injustice happen, Natalie scolded. You were there for Stephen during his most difficult time. You never gave up on him, but this is how he treats you? He brought back a souvenir for his mother, but not your parents.
It was true that this was a sign of disrespect. Victoria didn't want to make things difficult for Kim, so she answered for her.
I'm sorry about that. Stephen didn't think it through. How about this? I'll give you my souvenir.
Natalie sneered.
You make it sound like we're here to beg for food. Who asked you to give me your souvenir?
Mavis interrupted.
Natalie, what are you saying? She's offering you the gift. You should accept it with a clear conscience.
Natalie and Kyle didn't know how valuable the gift boxes were. Mavis was worried that they would turn down Victoria's offer, so she made the decision for them.
Good things come in pairs, Helen added. Kim, your mother-in-law is offering her souvenir to your mother, so why don't you give yours to your father?
Kim could tell what was going on with one look. The Cassidy and Haynes families were using Natalie and Kyle. I'll give my gift and Valeria's gift to my parents. That should be fine, right? Kim went inside and took out the 3 sets of gifts and handed them over. Helen and the others had achieved their goal, so they changed their target. They surrounded Natalie and Kyle.
You should give us the 3 boxes, Helen said with a smile. You're not interested in them. It would be a waste for you to leave them in the house to collect dust.
Natalie was hesitant.
But I heard they're valuable. From a collector's point of view, they are, but you're not, so it's worthless. How about this? I'll give you 2 of my properties and transfer them to your name. What do you think?
Natalie and Kyle were convinced. To them, it seemed like they'd received 2 properties for no reason, but little did they know that they weren't worth more than a fraction of the souvenirs from the ceremony.
Okay, we'll give you the souvenirs then.
Natalie passed the 3 boxes to Helen, Gordon, and Mavis. They could barely contain their excitement. They held on to them as if they would never let them go. Before leaving, Mavis threw a contemptuous look over her shoulder.
Stephen, you're an outsider. You'll never compare to our families.
They'd succeeded, so they left in high spirits. Natalie and Kyle, who had obtained 2 new properties, were also very satisfied. Valeria had been holding in her tears as she watched her souvenir being handed away. When Helen and the others left, she started crying.
They're all bad people. I don't want their things. I want Daddy's gift. Valeria, don't cry.
Stephen picked her up and sat her on his lap.
If it's something you want, I can get it for you at any time.
He could have stopped Helen and the others from taking the souvenirs, but the Cassidy and Haynes families were ordinary wealthy families. They were different from the Adams family and the other upper-class families in Annapolis. They didn't have the means to protect themselves if danger arose. Helen and the others were greedy, materialistic, and manipulative, but they were still Kim's family and citizens of the country. Stephen couldn't reveal his recovery or his identity. It would have put them at risk. Valeria sniffed and looked up at him with teary eyes.
Really?
Of course. When has Daddy ever lied to you?
Never.
As the sovereign, Stephen could get as many gift boxes as he wanted. He sent a message to Annapolis. The officials worked quickly and sent him 3 more sets of gifts on the same day. Kim looked down at the 3 gift boxes in her hands again. So that's why you told me to give those boxes away. These are exactly the same as the ones from before. How did you get them? Did your friends from the military give them to you? Stephen gave her a vague answer, which she accepted. The storm had passed, and the peace returned. But just as quickly as the previous storm came, another took its place. 2 unexpected guests arrived. A military truck was parked at the entrance to the villa. Move those boxes inside. Be careful. They're expensive medicinal herbs. Don't damage them. Sylvie was standing beside it and giving instructions to the soldiers. She asked them to move the boxes into the house. Kylan was next to her. Golden sage salve, snow lotus, 1,000-year-old ginsengs, winter summer grass. The rare and precious medicinal herbs were being transported into the villa in boxes. They were rare on the outside, but common and abundant to the aristocrats. Stephen was stunned.
General Estrella, what are you doing?
These medicinal herbs are from me and Kylan, Sylvie replied. We spent a lot of effort to get them for you. You already know our objective. We want you to recover as soon as possible. Kylan nodded. I want you to recover and return to your peak condition. I look forward to having another duel with you again. Stephen was speechless. Why was Kylan so determined to defeat him?
The medicines are already here, so I'll accept them. I'll use them accordingly and recover as soon as I can. Don't worry.
He had to chase them away before Kim came back. The last time military people came when she was home was when Kylan's students barged into the house and demanded he leaves the country. Kim would be worried if she ran into Kylan and Sylvie. Fortunately, Kylan didn't say much. He said his goodbyes to Stephen and Sylvie before leaving. But Sylvie didn't follow him out.
General Estrella, do you have something else you'd like to say?
I can't leave yet. Kylan and I discussed this before coming. I'll be staying behind to monitor your condition. I'm familiar with ancient medicine, so I'll be treating you personally.
What?
But Stephen couldn't just drive her away. She and Kylan had made it clear that they would be treating him using ancient medicine. They would get suspicious if he rejected her offer.
Well, all right, but how do you plan on treating me?
I need to check your condition first. Sylvie rummaged through one of the boxes and pulled out a vial. The examination process will hurt a bit, but it'll be brief. Take this and fill your body with energy. She stuffed the vial into Stephen's mouth with no explanation. He had no choice but to swallow. The liquid was refreshing, and the feeling spread through his body as it was absorbed. Then there was the sound of his bones cracking. How do you feel?
Oddly energized? It's not some kind of shady drug, right?
This is an ancient medicine, Sylvie snapped. It's from a hidden clan. That's why its effects are out of this world. Even a 100-year-old will feel 10 years younger after consuming this medicine. It benefits the body without causing harm. Stephen laughed.
Why are you so angry? I was just kidding.
Sylvie gave him a once-over. You were the former commander, but you are still an outsider. It's not surprising that you don't know how effective ancient medicine is. Anyway, you've taken the medicine, so I'll examine your condition now.
Thank you, General Estrella. Go ahead.
To prevent Sylvie from being suspicious, Stephen deliberately concealed his inner energy and used his cultivation to create an illusion that he was in a bad condition. He managed to deceive her. Your condition is serious, Sylvie said with a frown. It's even worse than I imagined. It seems like I'll need to stay here for a period of time to stabilize your condition before I can leave without worrying. Stay here for a period of time? Stephen echoed, his voice rising a pitch. How long would that be? For about one course of treatment. And how long is one course of treatment? Generally speaking, one course of treatment will take around a month. But that's just an approximate. I won't know until we begin. It could take maybe 3 to 5 months, or maybe even a year or so. Anything is possible. Stephen was at a loss for words. Was she already prepared to treat him for such a long time? He couldn't let this happen. General Estrella, listen to me. As the general of the army, you should focus on the military, not me. You don't have to worry about that. I've made preparations with my battalion before leaving. They should be fine without me. Helping you recover is more important. You were the former commander. You need to take back your position. But a month is a long time. Sylvie cut him off. It doesn't matter. I've arranged everything. She motioned to one of the soldiers. He carried several boxes into the house. Stephen was almost afraid to ask. General Estrella, what are you doing? Those are my daily necessities. I've decided to move in with you to ensure the efficiency of the treatment. Stephen nearly choked. Wasn't Sylvie a little too overbearing? She was moving into someone's house without asking the owner's opinion. They'd barely had any interactions in the past, but he had heard that she was straightforward and assertive. No one could change her mind once she'd made a decision. This was even more so for Stephen. He was supposed to be weak and injured, someone who had barely returned from the dead. He naturally had no strength to speak of. He couldn't stop her. The gates swung open on the nth time that day, but it wasn't an unexpected guest. It was Kim, Victoria, and Valeria. Kim was confused to hear a commotion coming from the yard. She spotted a military truck parked in front of the house. An unfamiliar woman was standing next to it and pointing here and there. She was telling a few soldiers in uniform to unload the truck and move the boxes into the villa. Those who didn't know the residents would mistake the woman for the owner of the house. Kim frowned at the pile of boxes on the ground. Stephen, what's going on? Are you planning to move? She glanced at the woman. And who's this? This is... Sylvie cut Stephen off again. You're Kim Cassidy, right? Let me introduce myself. I'm Sylvie Estrella. I serve in the army like Stephen. We once fought side by side. His current condition is worse for wear. I'm known for my medical skills in the military. I've decided to move in and treat him to make sure he recovers soon and monitor his condition. Kim was dumbfounded. What? You want to live here? Sylvie looked around at the villa. Yeah, your home is spacious. One room will be enough for me. She disappeared into the house. Stephen, Kim, and Victoria glanced at each other before following her inside. Sylvie took off her shoes at the doorway and did a quick circle around the house, peering into a few rooms on the first floor. She stopped in front of one of the guest rooms. I'll stay in this room. Kim was taken aback at how smoothly Sylvie was settling into their house without asking for permission. Wasn't she a little too overbearing? Miss Sylvie, I appreciate you wanting to treat Stephen, but don't you think moving in is a bit inappropriate? Sylvie gave her a puzzled look. She had no idea what she was talking about. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It'll make it more convenient for both of us. As his family, don't you want to see him make a full recovery? Kim and Victoria were rendered speechless. I'm going to begin the treatment process. Please help me. Susie pointed at a few boxes near the kitchen. This, and that. Take out the herbs and prepare the medicine. Brew it under a low heat. The temperature is important to maximize the medicine's effects. Kim was still trying to process everything that had been thrown at her since she came home. But this medicine would help Stephen recover, so she did what Sylvie asked. While Kim and Victoria were in the kitchen, Sylvie opened another box and placed an assortment of tools and devices on the table. She treated Stephen while the medicine was brewing. Half an hour later, the medicine was ready. Kim brought a bowl of medicinal brew to the living room and passed it to Stephen. How do you feel? Sylvie asked when he finished the bowl. Much better. Of course, Sylvie said proudly. Only 1 in a million have ancient medicine on the outside. She turned to Kim and Victoria. There's still leftover medicine in the pot. We shouldn't waste it. You two should drink it. You want us to ingest the leftover medicine? Kim asked. Yeah, what's the matter? This medicine will work wonders for you outsiders. If you don't believe me, you can try it for yourself. Sylvie went into the kitchen and poured 2 bowls of medicine. She went back to Kim and pressed the bowl to her mouth. Kim had no choice but to drink and swallow. How do you feel? Sylvie asked. Kim immediately felt her head clear and her senses heightened. Her exhaustion from a busy day had disappeared without a trace. The look on her face was all the confirmation that Sylvie needed. She handed the other bowl to Victoria. You should try it too. Victoria was skeptical as she took a sip of the strange medicine. The effect was immediate and obvious. She'd been worn down from more than 2 decades of being imprisoned at the seaside town, but after drinking the medicine, the wrinkles on her face were much less apparent. She looked several years younger. See, I didn't lie to you. Sylvie's medicine was so magical that Kim and Victoria were hopeful that Stephen would recover soon. At the same time, they were curious about Sylvie's identity. From the way she carried herself, her status in the military was definitely up there. As Sylvie proceeded with the treatment process, she took over Kim's duties and replaced her in taking care of Stephen. Kim didn't complain, but Victoria could tell how she was feeling. Victoria found an opportunity when Sylvie wasn't around and sat down to have a talk with Stephen. You should really consider Kim's feelings. It's awkward to have Sylvie in the house. We're grateful that she's treating you, but I don't think it's necessary for her to live with us. Why don't we book a high-class hotel for her instead? She won't listen, Stephen said helplessly. Who could persuade someone like Sylvie? The only way to get her out of the house was to expose himself, but that wasn't an option. Victoria went to look for Kim and told her that Stephen couldn't do anything about Sylvie. Kim sighed. She appreciated Sylvie's determination to treat Stephen, but she didn't think it was necessary for her to get involved in their lives so deeply. Not to mention, they were suddenly living together with a strange, overbearing woman. Their peaceful lives had turned awkward. Victoria pointed out the window. Why are there so many cars downstairs? Kim looked over. There were luxury cars and commercial vehicles. She noticed the governor of the district among the guests. This was not good. She hurried down the stairs to welcome the guests, but when she got to the door, she found the guests greeting Sylvie and addressing her as General Estrella. The local big shots, politicians, elites of the business industry, and high-ranking officials of the military introduced themselves and exchanged pleasantries. At the mention of General Estrella, Kim recalled the live broadcast of the ceremony. Before the ceremony, there weren't that many people who had heard of Sylvie, but after she spoke out during the broadcast, her name had spread across the country. Not just anyone could have the courage to question the sovereign during a grand occasion that was broadcasted live to the world. After the ceremony, the people found out that Sylvie was the general of the army, who was equally as famous as Kylan in the military. Sylvie instantly gained many fans. The big shots of the country paid attention to her every move. They knew she was visiting Washington, D.C. Famous figures from all walks of life came to pay their respects. Kim hadn't recognized Sylvie because she wasn't in her uniform. After knowing her identity, Kim felt even more pressured. Sylvie was on par with Kylan, and her status was only second to the former commander. She was young with a pretty face, and she had a glorious battle record. It was no surprise that she'd become popular among the masses. Wave after wave of guests came to greet Sylvie. The commotion finally came to an end after a few hours. Valeria wasn't happy to see Sylvie at the center of attention, while Kim and Victoria were ignored. It was only after the guests had left that Sylvie realized that Valeria was pouting at her. What's the matter, little girl?
I don't like you.
Valeria turned her head away.
Mommy, I don't like her. I don't want to live with her.
Kim was also feeling awkward after Sylvie had barged into their lives, but she couldn't say that to her face. Sorry, don't take it to heart. She's shy around strangers. Kim leaned close to Valeria's ear and whispered, Be good, Valeria. She'll only be with us for a few more days. She made sure her voice was hushed, but Sylvie heard everything. That's hard to say. My length of stay will be determined by Stephen's condition. It could be 3 to 5 months, or maybe a year and a half, but it'll be at least a month. While Kim was searching for the words, she went on. Stephen just received treatment and needs to rest. Don't disturb him. Without waiting for her answer, Sylvie walked out the front door and looped around the house. What is she doing? Victoria asked. Kim shrugged. How should I know? After a while, Sylvie came back. Don't you have any special bodyguards? Yeah, we do, Kim said. Camilla, my personal bodyguard, is always around us. There are also security guards who patrol the neighborhood. Sylvie frowned. Is that it? Don't you know that Stephen's a former commander? He has numerous enemies who want to get rid of him before he recovers. With such a weak security force, are you trying to make his death come faster? No, it's just that Stephen doesn't like to be restrained. Whether he likes it or not, safety's more important. Sylvie took out her phone and made a call. 5 minutes later, a group of soldiers appeared. They're elite soldiers under my command. Starting today, they'll be responsible for the security here. Kim didn't have a problem with Sylvie hiring more guards, but it was her way of handling things without asking for anyone's permission that grated her nerves. After Sylvie strengthened the security around the house, it became a luxury for Kim to meet Stephen. Sylvie told her they were at a critical point in the treatment process, so it was important for him to rest without disturbing him. As such, during the past few days, even though they were under the same roof, the number of times Kim and Stephen came into contact with one another could be counted on one hand. One day, Valeria couldn't take it anymore. She ran to Kim and Victoria and cried her eyes out. Mommy, Grandma, I want to see Daddy. Sylvie said I'm too nosy and that I'll be bothering Daddy if I saw him. But I'll be quiet. I miss Daddy. Victoria wasn't pleased. That Sylvie is crossing a line. It's fine if she doesn't want us to see Stephen, but why is she restricting Valeria? Even a world-renowned doctor like Dr. Sloan didn't stop us from seeing Stephen when he was being treated, Kim said. I think I need to have a word with Stephen. She's disrupting our daily lives. When Kim went to Stephen's room, the guards that Sylvie had arranged stopped her at the door. Miss Kim, General Estrella instructed us to tell you that you may only meet your husband 3 times a day, and each meeting cannot exceed 10 minutes. You've already used up your daily visits. Are you telling me that having breakfast and dinner together are included in the 3 visits? Yes. Kim was reaching the end of her patience. What made her even angrier was that Sylvie kept using that excuse that Stephen needed rest. How was she supposed to argue against that? Anyhow, it seemed like she wouldn't be able to see Stephen today. The next morning, Kim and Victoria took Stephen out on a walk as an excuse to escape from the guard's watchful eyes and to have a private discussion with him. Stephen, we need to talk. Kim didn't give him a chance to say anything before she launched into a tirade of complaints that she'd been holding in. A strange woman moves into our house and starts living with us, and now the whole family needs her permission to see you. Do you think this is normal? I understand she's here to treat you, and we're thankful for that. But don't you think all these restrictions are going overboard? Mom and I are fine with it, but Valeria's a child. She misses you, and you know how well behaved she is. She won't bother you. Ever since Sylvie moved in, Kim had started feeling like her family didn't exist. Sylvie had gone too far. It wasn't right for her to disrupt their lives. And what made Kim even angrier was that Stephen never put up a fight. It was like he didn't care. In the past, Stephen always had something to say, even if speaking up put him at a disadvantage. But now, it was like he'd become a completely different person. About that, Stephen began. Let's put up with it for now. Sylvie's a military doctor, and her medical skills are one of the best. She's also the general of the army. I can't make her leave. He felt a headache coming on from just thinking about Sylvie's behavior since she moved in. Local officials and socialites came to pay her a visit on a daily basis. Her every action was being monitored by the public. Sylvie was here to treat him, and theoretically, he should be more than grateful to accept her help. He would be exposed if he did anything out of the ordinary. Investigating the hostile factions would be difficult if he alerted them. Sylvie was also from an aristocratic family. Getting into a conflict with her would attract more unnecessary attention. Stephen had to be careful. He couldn't give himself away when they were almost at the finish line. Kim wasn't satisfied with his answer. So you're just gonna let her do whatever she wants? In our house? Stephen didn't say anything. Shouldn't you at least talk with Sylvie? Victoria asked. We understand the situation, but restricting us to this extent is going overboard. You should think about Kim. Kim trusts you, but how do you think she'll feel seeing her husband spend so much time with another woman and doing nothing when she's forcing our family apart? You haven't said a word to Sylvie. Kim, Mom, I have my reasons. I just want you to have a talk with Sylvie and draw the line, Victoria urged. How hard can it be? Mom, I don't think we're getting through to him, Kim said when they reached the house. Let's give him some time to think it over by himself. Stephen let out a sigh as he watched them leave. Sylvie's restrictions were affecting their daily lives. He hadn't even seen Valeria for the past 3 days. Kim was right. This wasn't normal. He hadn't seen Nora or Camilla recently either, but he knew Nora was keeping an eye on the situation from a distance. Stephen dialed Aston's number. How's the investigation on Sylvie going? I've sent my subordinate to take care of it. He'll be back soon. All right, it'll be for the best if Sylvie doesn't have any ulterior motives, but if she's an enemy, I won't let her off lightly. Stephen ended the call and headed back inside. If he was gone for too long, Sylvie would come looking for him. Before Kim knew it, a month had passed. Their abnormal life with Sylvie continued. Kim was busy with the Wyvern Group and Tanith Corporation, so she had to work overtime more often. She usually only saw Stephen during breakfast. When Kim came home in the evening, Sylvie prohibited her from sleeping in the same room as Stephen and told her to abstain from engaging in nighttime activities. Victoria and Valeria weren't faring much better. They rarely saw Stephen, except during their 3 meals of the day. Valeria had started distancing herself from him and stopped coming to look for him. Is that how you've been spending the month? After listening to Kim's complaints, Jasmine couldn't believe it. That's not normal. You're really patient. If it were me, I would have exploded after a week. Who cares if she's some kind of famous general in the army? She has no right to interfere with your family's lives. But she came all the way here to treat Stephen, Kim said. Isn't that just an excuse? Think about it. It's been a month and Stephen's condition hasn't improved. Is her treatment really working? Whatever the case may be, I have an idea you can try. Jasmine leaned over and whispered her plan. I don't know about this. If you don't want this kind of life to continue, you need to have the courage to confront her. You're not doing anything wrong. You're just setting boundaries. And if Stephen really cares about you, he'll support you. Okay, I'll see what she says, Kim said, resigned. When she got off work, she found Sylvie and Stephen together. What's the matter, Miss Kim? Sylvie asked. It's getting late. Stephen needs his rest. Can this wait until tomorrow? No, it can't. My family and I have been listening to you since you came and did our best to stay out of your way. You kept going on and on about your medical skills and proficiency in ancient medicine, but his condition hasn't improved at all. Is your treatment really working? Sylvie didn't have anything to say for herself because Kim's accusation was a fact. Stephen's condition was the same as 1 month ago, and she didn't know why. Kim got straight to the point. Since your treatment is ineffective, why are you still staying here? Shouldn't you leave? Or if you insist on continuing your treatment, can't you stay elsewhere and come over when it's necessary? I can't do that. I won't be leaving until his condition improves. Then let's ask your patient for his opinion. Kim looked at Stephen. Are you going to tell her to leave? Stephen hesitated. I don't think this is the right time for that. Okay, then you want to keep her around and continue with this kind of life. Fine, she can stay. I'll leave. Kim carried Valeria to her room and packed their bags. Then they headed for the door without looking back. Wait, Kim! Kim turned around and waited. Stephen didn't know how to ask her to stay. He knew she'd been putting up with Sylvie's restrictions for a month, and her patience had reached its limit. When he didn't say anything, Kim walked out the door with Valeria in tow. The disappointment was written all over her face. As for Sylvia, she didn't think much of Kim and Valeria's departure. She had one goal, and that was to ensure Stephen's speedy recovery. That's 2 fewer people to bother you while you recover. Stephen gave Sylvia an incredulous look, which she ignored. She was deep in thought. But I don't get it. I've been doing my best to treat you for the past month, and I've been using all kinds of ancient medicines. You should at least be able to stand and walk around. Stephen had been manipulating his condition using his cultivation. It was a flawless disguise that she hadn't been able to see through. But his relationship crisis with Kim was because of Sylvie's presence. He couldn't kick Sylvie out, so he had to make her leave on her own. General Estrella, don't waste your time and energy. My condition is the same even after a month of treatment. I'll probably never recover. Sylvie frowned. That doesn't make any sense. Ancient medicine should be effective. In the outside world, they can achieve twice the results with half the effort. Why haven't there been any changes to your condition? There must be an issue I haven't realized yet. I'll need to do some research. If this really doesn't work, then I'll go back to my family and ask a more skilled physician to come over. Sylvia ignored Stephen and went back to her room. She sat down and flipped through the medical texts piled on her desk. Stephen was speechless. Sylvie was frustratingly stubborn. How was he supposed to make her leave willingly? Natalie and Kyle were furious when Kim arrived with Valeria in her arms and a duffel bag slung over her shoulder. It was obvious that Stephen had chased them out of the house. Natalie ushered them inside and seated them at the table. After listening to Kim's narration, Kyle was so angry that he slammed the table. Stephen hadn't chased them out of the house, but he might as well have. He hadn't spoken up in Kim's defense and chose that strange woman over his own wife. This is preposterous. I'm going to find him right now and give him a good scolding. Natalie agreed. Kim, stay here with Valeria. Your dad and I will get an explanation out of that ungrateful brat if it's the last thing we do. They stormed out of the house and barged into Kim and Stephen's villa. Natalie's eyes blazed with anger when she saw Sylvie in the house. Stephen, what the hell is going on here? Have you forgotten everything Kim did for you? She believed in you when you left without a word, and she spared no effort to take care of you after you were injured. You'll never find someone like her again. Kyle joined in. Explain yourself, Stephen. How could you let your wife and daughter leave and side with some unknown woman? Natalie looked around. Where's your mother? Tell her to come out. I want to ask her if she agrees with this behavior. Stephen shook his head. I don't know where she is. Don't tell me you chased her away too, Natalie said. You're the lowest of low. Abandoning your wife and daughter wasn't enough, so you abandoned your mother along with them for some other woman? Stephen wanted to explain, but the truth was all around them. And he couldn't expose himself. Mom, Dad, this is a complicated situation. I can't give you a proper explanation right now, but I promise I'll answer all your questions in the future. No, explain yourself right now, Natalie demanded. We won't be leaving until we get an explanation, Kyle said. Sylvie interrupted. Stop messing around. You were rambling nonsense from the moment you walked in the door. Do you two even understand the situation? It was Kim who was being unreasonable. Natalie exploded. Did you hear that? That woman said our daughter is being unreasonable. I heard her loud and clear, Kyle said coldly. She also said we were messing around. How ignorant can you be? Natalie said. This is our daughter's home, not yours. You have no right to talk like that in someone else's home. Sylvie didn't back down. Does that mean your daughter can be unreasonable just because this is her home? She's affecting Stephen's treatment. Besides, Kim's just an ordinary person. It's an honor for her to marry Stephen. As for you, so-called blood relatives, did you forget how you treated him in the past? You're not worthy of being his in-laws, and Kim is even less worthy of him. As the general of the army, it had been a simple task to investigate Stephen's family. Like most people in the country, she held great respect for him. An outsider becoming the commander-in-chief was an incredible feat. If he married into a Beaumont family or got involved with an aristocratic family, he would have become someone so much greater. During the past month, Sylvie had looked into the Cassidy and Haynes families during her free time. She thought it was ridiculous how they treated him like dirt. Sylvie had also interacted with Kim quite often. No matter how she looked at it, Kim just wasn't that outstanding of a person. The perfect partner for Stephen should have reached at least Sylvie's level. How dare you say that Kim isn't worthy of Stephen? Shouldn't it be the opposite? Natalie and Kyle refuted this. As far as they knew, Stephen's highest achievement was being the owner of the Wyvern Group. He was the illegitimate son of the Addams family, but Terrence hadn't acknowledged him as such. Kim's business had spread across the region, and she had long since become a billionaire. Not to mention, the head of the Cassidy family in Annapolis had adopted Kim as his daughter and treated her like family. I didn't say anything that wasn't true, Sylvie shot back. It would be even better if Stephen and Kim divorced. She's holding him back. Natalie pointed an accusing finger at Stephen. Did you already make plans to divorce Kim and get together with this woman? I never took you for someone so despicable, Kyle said. When Stephen didn't try to defend himself, Natalie gave up. It's a waste of time to talk to him. He hooked up with this woman a long time ago. Let's go. Kyle threw one last disdainful look at Stephen before leaving and said, You'd better not regret this. Don't even think about seeing Kim and Valeria again. The door slammed shut. This time, Stephen felt a migraine coming on. Things had gotten way out of hand. Natalie and Kyle had gotten involved. He wouldn't be surprised if in less than 2 days, rumors started spreading that he coveted wealth and status and abandoned his wife and daughter for the general of the army. Stephen wouldn't be able to do anything about it for the time being. Sylvie was a hindrance, and she was ruining his life in the literal sense. He had to get rid of her soon.